It's so early. I'm your host, Will Schoellkopf, author of the Bitcoin Dog, following descent to the Bitcoin C++ source code, and contributor to Bitcoin Magazine. I'm here with my good friend, Alex Avila. Alex, thanks again for coming onto the podcast.
Hi, thanks, man. I appreciate it. I'm a technician for a big aerospace company, and I really just wanted to get some more knowledge on Bitcoin, and so I got some questions for you.
Yeah, well, shoot.
Okay, so Bitcoin is talked about a lot in investment spaces, but I've also heard talk like people have bought stuff with Bitcoin. So what I can't quite reconcile is how Bitcoin can simultaneously be a currency and a form of investment.
Yeah, no, Alex, that's a great question. I'm glad you asked. So, first of all, Bitcoin is many things to many people, and the important thing is that Bitcoin doesn't care. So TikTok next block, as they say. The Bitcoin protocol keeps going on, validating transactions. So, however users want to assign value to Bitcoin, they can, and that's what's cool is it's up to each individual. To your point, yes, I think the first thing I'd want to touch on is a lot of people make an analogy of Bitcoin to digital gold. So whatever are the physical properties of gold or any of the reasons people would invest in gold as a store of value, you could see Bitcoin the same way as a digital gold.
Well, I mean, it's not like people will still go around with gold coins to buy stuff, or even the gold, bullions, I think they're called, or bricks.
Sure, yeah.
Like nobody's here. Have this for a shirt,
Let me buy it, make sure it's real.
Right. So how does Bitcoin kind of equate to $1 and also a brick of gold?
Sure, yeah. So that's just the first thing to understand is some people don't think Bitcoin will ever be a digital currency. This term cryptocurrency came about implying that these digital assets have to be used as a currency, but it doesn't have to be that way. So if you were someone interested in investing in Bitcoin, again, hashtag not financial advice, but if you were someone interested in investing in Bitcoin, it might deem value to you simply just as an investment that holds its value. A parallel as an example for gold. So the question is, how much is an ounce of gold worth? If we measure gold in dollar terms, it's changed throughout the years. I think in the 1930s, they said 1 ounce of gold was worth $35, so you could trade in 1 ounce for $35. Today, 1 ounce of gold is worth $1,900. But of course, we know that $1,900 today, or $35 today, is not what it was back then. So traditionally, if you go back 2,000 years or even 5,000 years, or let's keep it at 2,000 years, the idea of what could you buy with an ounce of gold is a really nice suit. So if you wanted to go to your local tailor or your local shop and you were like, I'm really looking for like a really fine suit, something I could wear and be proud of. An ounce of gold has tended to keep that value. So the question that the rest of the world needs to find out is, what is 1 Bitcoin worth? And that's something that we don't know yet. So
is that like, because I also know a tiny bit about Bitcoin from just talking to you in general, and listening to some of the podcasts, but like 1 Bitcoin as a whole, or as one Satoshi, or the divisions that you can go down to?
Sure, both ultimately, because Satoshi's a division. So on the flip side, on my example of an ounce of gold, what about 12 ounces of gold? A gold bar. I actually forget how many ounces is considered a bar of gold, but that would be the equivalent. So whether we're determining like what's 1 Satoshi worth or 1,000 Satoshis worth, we could analyze that to Bitcoin. So
once we get a baseline, then it's easier to kind of...
Yeah. So that's just like the big thing I want to emphasize right off the bat, that some people think it's just like an asset you could hold to have value. So the next question is the currency. Did you have any other comments on that?
Yeah, so I mean, most people see it as an investment. I thought the idea was also for it to be used as a currency, or is it really more of a more advanced form of storing your wealth, but then also owning it yourself. Whereas I don't put my wealth in a bank or some other account that somebody else has. It's my own. I have it on my own, hard drive or whatever, whatever thing that you use to store it.
Yeah. So the first thing I definitely want to make clear is ultimately for Bitcoin, your Bitcoin exists on the Bitcoin blockchain. It exists as something called UTXOs, or unspent transaction outputs. So that's how it exists in terms of how much Bitcoin you have. So the thing that you have in a cold storage hardware wallet is a way to store your private keys. So that way, so the Bitcoin is not actually on that cold storage hardware wallet, but that's just a way to hold the keys to then spend the Bitcoin that's on the blockchain. In particular, for the currency aspect of it, I see the term used for that is called Hyperbitcoinization. So kind of, it's kind of an exciting term, Hyperbitcoinization.
It's got a lot going for it.
Yeah, that's right. It's the time where we've reached a world where you can use Bitcoin as a currency. So the properties of money are scarcity, like how plentiful or scarce it is. Durability, does the money itself degrade over time? Medium of exchange, how easy is it to transfer between two people? And then the fourth one is unit of account. So unit of account means when you price things, you price them in terms of Bitcoin. We're not there yet in unit of account. Right now, we still price things in dollars.
Right.
And then maybe if you want to buy something with Bitcoin, we're converting it between dollars and Bitcoin to spend it.
And that kind of goes back to the how much is a Satoshi, how much is a single Bitcoin, right? Yeah. So until we can like identify that as a market, we won't be able to get to that point yet.
Yeah.
And I kind of see like that. That's what I'm saying is like, how do we get to that point where we're able to use it as a currency, but also as a form of investment? Because it is a digitally scarce thing, right? It has actual digital scarcity. So I just struggle like, all right, we're gonna have all the Bitcoin we ever have now. It's already there.
Yeah.
We're not gonna have more.
Yeah.
We know exactly how much Bitcoin we're gonna have. So there's the scarcity, and we know exactly the amount of divisions in however you want to call it, Satoshi, whatever else you want to say.
Yeah.
But how do we then? All right, if let's just say one Bitcoin is worth $1 trillion.
Okay.
I don't know, just a really wild number, right?
Yeah.
And then the divisions are only 100 million. I don't know how many they actually are. But
there's 100 million Satoshis in one Bitcoin.
Oh, okay. 100 million. So, you have 100 million and one is a trillion. So one coin is what, like 100,000? I forget. I can't do the math right now, but
one Bitcoin's 100 million Satoshis. Yep.
No, but I meant like if one Bitcoin's a trillion and so
I see. Like, what is one Satoshi worth?
Right.
Yeah, one Satoshi might worth like $100,000 or something.
Right.
Yeah.
So I can't exactly use one Satoshi to buy a cup of coffee.
Yeah.
So how do we get to that point? Is it like, what we do is then we have a live transaction for one Satoshi, and then it gets converted to, let's say, US dollars, because that's the easiest. And then now you just have that access to the US dollars of $100,000.
Sure, yeah. So the first, you bring up a great point. The first thing to consider is if one Bitcoin is worth $1 trillion, the question that follows is what happened to the US dollar? Like, what kind of a world are we living in where the US dollar is so quote unquote worthless that it takes $1 trillion to be worth one Bitcoin? Like at that point, I think it is the case that in Zimbabwe, like their most biggest paper bill is 100 trillion Zimbabwe dollars, just printed on a piece of paper, just to show how worthless the Zimbabwe dollar has become.
Sure.
So I think while it's like a good question to ask, how can this Bitcoin go forever when I'm converting it to dollars? I think at that point where one Bitcoin is worth $1 trillion, which, hey, if you think it's even a possibility of Bitcoin could be worth $1 trillion, it could be a good investment. Not financial advice, but
Hashtag not financial
yeah, that's
advice.
right. But by then we would say the hyper-Bitcoinization is complete. Really, one Bitcoin is worth one Bitcoin. That's ultimately the goal. Like, how much is a Bitcoin worth one Bitcoin? And then it's about the actual real-world value. The other thing, though, to be concerned about, well, what happens when we hit 100 million Satoshis? You know, have we hit a limit or something? I would say you could always do a second layer abstracted over Bitcoin. The 21 million number is arbitrary. It's just a base level protocol, but we can have higher layered level denominations. My best example is when you go to the gas station. They might show that the cost of a gallon of gas is $6.99, but the gas station, it'll say $6.99 and 9/10 sometimes, and it's like 9/10. Where are they getting this 9/10 from?
I always wondered that.
You can't actually break up a penny into smaller than a penny,
right.
9/10 of a penny, but really, who's to say you can't? Certainly the gas station thinks you can.
That's a good point.
So that's where, even if there's a limit, like only 100 pennies in a dollar, really this is just math, this is just decimal places. You could go lower if you want, and then add up those things, and then in real world value, then it eventually rounds up to the dollar.
So you're saying basically, even though we have a set amount of Bitcoin, you could still then subdivide the Satoshis. So how does that make it any different from,
and to be
from
clear,
real
right,
currency, right? You could just print more currency.
Well, so let's be clear right now. First of all, right now, I think it's about 3,000 Satoshis is $1. So we have a ways to go before we're at the point where one Satoshi is worth $1. Sure. I mean, there's also a movement to get rid of $1 paper bills and do $1 coins, and get rid of the penny entirely. And we're not even exchanging value in terms of pennies anyway. So it's already happening where it's like we don't even necessarily need to denominate into smaller sums in the first place.
Well, and I was talking to somebody who said they remember, gas was like 70 cents a gallon. Now it's like $7 a gallon.
Yeah.
It's,
Yeah, it's pretty crazy.
Maybe the cents don't matter so much.
Yeah. So the important thing is that there's a limit of 21 million Bitcoin. So even though you can subdivide to infinity, that's not actually increasing the amount of Bitcoin. So that's not actually making more.
Yeah, right.
It's just dividing it up more.
Yeah, that's true. Just because it allows you to create pennies out of dollars.
That's right. So you're not actually getting more money when you break a dollar into 4 quarters, or you break 4 quarters into 10 dimes. It's not actually more money. It's just you've just divided it more. Yeah.
That's pretty good.
Yeah,
that's
exactly.
actually a pretty cool system.
Yeah. Now on the flip side, there's plenty of people who take $1,000 and make it into $1 bills, so they can make it rain.
Oh, of course.
And, everybody loves to make it rain.
Well, then that brings me to my most important question. Will, if I wanted to make it rain Satoshis, how do I do that?
Oh, yeah. That's a
hard
question.
one.
You spend your Satoshis on Monopoly dollar bills, and then you make it rain.
That's it. That's it right there.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's true, too. I was just asking you before we started recording the podcast about, paying for everything in cash, and you're like, you don't even pay for anything in cash.
That is true.
Like, it's already all digital anyway. So I'd rather make it rain by buying beers, buying drinks. Like,
cheers to that.
Yeah, cheers to that, So, like, that's the way we make it rain, not by diving into a pool of gold coins or something.
Although diving into a pool of gold coins sounds pretty great.
Yeah, so comfortable.
Exactly.
So in particular, though, the world is still figuring out what one Bitcoin is worth, right? So we're still on that journey. There's a lot of price volatility in the meantime. As right now, it's in the news. The price of Bitcoin right now is down 70% from its all-time high.
Sure.
So at the time of this recording, Bitcoin's about $20,000 a Bitcoin. It was $69,000 recently.
What was it like when it started? Like cents? So
that's the coolest thing. So when it started, it didn't even have a price. So it launched in January 3rd, 2009. And anyone could mine Bitcoin if they wanted to. It's a totally permissionless protocol. There was no pre-mine. Satoshi Nakamoto didn't on purpose reward himself with more Bitcoin. It's just the code was open source, available to anyone. Whoever wanted to could have.
Yeah.
We could have. We didn't.
Idiots.
Yeah, idiots, but we could have. And so, don't get me wrong. I'm sure the pseudonymous founder of Bitcoin, Satoshi, I think his Bitcoin wallet has 1 million Bitcoin in it. It's never been spent ever. But, he did mine it. But it wasn't until May of 2010 that finally, I forget the name of the person, but someone made the first ever recorded Bitcoin transaction for real world value. There was someone across the world, he said, I will send you 10,000 Bitcoin if you will order 2 Papa John pizzas to my house. And it was the first, because we're talking about an exchange of value. What is a money but an exchange of value? So it's like, I send you 10,000 Bitcoin, you send me, have someone deliver to me 2 Papa John pizzas. And there they were on his doorstep. And people like to say that guy was a fool to get rid of his 10,000 Bitcoin like that. But before then, there was literally no value assigned to Bitcoin whatsoever.
So at that point, 10,000 Bitcoin became worth 2 Papa John pizzas at that time, whatever
so
it was. Let's say it was like, we said it was 2009, maybe like $18.
Yeah, right, something.
That was like 30, but
Yeah, so that's what really finally first established a price for what a Bitcoin is worth.
Okay.
And it's only worth what other people are willing to trade it for.
Sure.
But that's important in a money. We're not trying to have an intrinsic value. The problem is if it does inherently have its own value, then it's not a good money anymore. The only point of the money is to just store value and pass that value on to someone else.
Okay.
The famous example is I'm selling shoes, you're selling apples. You want to buy my shoes, but I don't want your apples. That's all you have to give to me. And you really want me to buy your apples because if I don't, they're going to go bad.
Yeah.
And then you're really stuck. So, what if we could just make a money, something that doesn't have any intrinsic value, but you and I assign it a value. And then now that you have the money, like you're not in this stressful position and you can go and use that money to buy or trade goods and services. So that's what Bitcoin's trying to do.
It's just a form of utility storage, right?
Mm-hmm. That's right. Store of value is the term.
Yeah. It's like, I used to have to be like, okay, I'll work on your farm for however many days to get this amount of crops so that I can feed myself.
Yeah.
But now it's like, okay, I could go work doing something else that has nothing to do with farming, but then I could still buy crops.
Restoring the value of your work into a money. And the important thing the innovation that Bitcoin does versus what's called fiat money issued by the government, like the US dollar, is it can't be debased. So no one can just artificially print more Bitcoin. It has a fixed supply. So it holds value in a great way in that sense. So when it comes to being...
And we talk about the divisions, it's not creating more of it.
That's right. The example of the dollar, breaking it up into quarters or dimes or nickels.
Exactly. The dollar is still a dollar. It doesn't matter how many pennies you got.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
So if you could turn $1 into 101 pennies, talk to me.
Definitely.
Yeah, that I don't care if it's only a penny. We will scale that up all the way. So this is perfect.
Right. So I got one last question for this.
Sure.
So in like a certain sci-fi franchise with magic swords made of light and not the Bitcoin dog.
Bitcoin dog falling sent to the Bitcoin C++ source code.
Get your copy.
So funny.
With magic guns that shoot little lasers and hairy, tall, monkey men. But you know what I'm talking about. Everyone's favorite. They use credits as a form of payment, and that seems to be universal throughout. So it does seem like Bitcoin is going to become universal throughout, at least planet Earth, right?
Yeah.
Whereas I may not be able to spend a Venezuelan dollar here in the U.S. or maybe a U.S. Well, U.S. dollars are pretty much accepted around everywhere else, but I don't know, maybe not in remote South America.
Well, on the flip side, that's the thing is you could get blocked. Right, so even though U.S. dollars are accepted everywhere, if you use PayPal as the way to transact with a country, PayPal might not on purpose support banks at different countries or customers at different countries, or Western Union might shut down its services for people in those countries. So even if the U.S. dollar is accepted everywhere, these intermediaries may stop you. The famous thing, people in Russia willing to pay for Netflix in dollars, Netflix shut off its services to
Yeah.
Russian citizens in the country. So
Right.
with Bitcoin, though, there's no central intermediaries
Yeah.
to shut down the service to you.
Like you and I can have a private transaction.
That's right. Well, I don't know if it's necessarily private because it'll be posted on the Bitcoin blockchain.
Well, we're not
but
going
yes,
through like a bank.
there's
or
no
like,
central authority
Yeah.
intermediary confirming the transaction. It's all proved by math and by cryptography that the Bitcoin you have is yours because you have the private key to sign it, and then we have the proof of work from the block that encaptures it to help make sure it's a valid transaction. The other thing I was going to say is, so how do we get there? How do we get to this future sci-fi scenario where Bitcoin is like credits? It's once Bitcoin has reached full adoption, that's where the value becomes a little more stable, and we're able to do the unit of account more simply.
Yeah.
So, for example, we reach a point where 1 Bitcoin is worth the value of a 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom house in sunny Los Angeles in Southern California with a view of the ocean. And that's
Sounds
the
pretty
value of 1 Bitcoin.
Okay.
And then the value of 1 Satoshi, dividing that by 100 million, that's the value of 1 gallon of gas.
Sure.
And that just
At this point,
and it just but it just has that value.
Yeah.
And that would be the idea. So we're no longer denominating the value of that three-bedroom beach house in
Yeah.
LA in dollars, and it keeps going up 10 million, 20 million, 30 million dollars. It's just 1 Bitcoin has that value, 1 Satoshi has that value of gas. And then the price has stabilized a little more, and then so you can trade however many Satoshis you want, to buy pizza, buy beer, buy whatever. It's more established what 1 Bitcoin is. So right now, while we're growing, it's kind of a twofold thing. Some people on purpose spend Bitcoin for goods and services because that utility helps with the Bitcoin value proposition. Like, it's a good thing to use Bitcoin to buy the things you want to buy. It gets more people plugged into the Bitcoin monetary network. It shows that you really can use Bitcoin to buy a cup of coffee, while 1 Bitcoin costs 20,000.
or 2 cups of, or 2 Papa John's pizzas, right?
Yeah, or 2 Papa John's pizzas. You can spend a smaller amount for the sake of that cup of coffee or something. And then the most interesting thing also, this is a tangent, but what Jack Mallers is trying to do with Strike is show that Bitcoin could be a payment network. So the big idea he has in particular is right now when you pay for money with a credit card to buy your beer or something, Visa is facilitating that transaction, and Visa charges a 3% fee for the merchant. So, even if you pay $20 for your pizza, 3% of that $20 is not actually going to the pizza maker, it's going to Visa for doing the transaction. But through the Bitcoin network, you could take those dollars, convert them into Bitcoin, get it to the pizza place, and they could convert the Bitcoin back into dollars themselves. And then there's no 3% fee for doing that. Like, you don't need Visa to facilitate that transaction. You could just use the Lightning Network.
Gotcha.
So, and they have their choice as the pizza place to just keep your Bitcoin as Bitcoin or to go ahead and convert it.
That's pretty cool, man.
Yeah.
This was a great talk, though. I learned a lot from this.
Not financial advice. The last question, Alex, though, is what would you say to anyone who thinks it's too late to get started in Bitcoin?
Man, it's so early.
All right, you heard it from Alex. It's so early.
Cheers.
Cheers.